She wasn't failing school. She was afraid to be seen struggling. On a quiet playground, a poor girl with worn shoes sat beside a billionaire's daughter. No pity, no rush, just patience. One small kindness changed a child, awakened a father, and quietly rewrote what family truly means forever inside. The playground at Briarcrest Academy was slowly emptying the way a theater empties after the lights come back on. Children were picked up in clusters, laughing, talking, pulling backpacks behind them like small trophies. Maren Hale, 6 years old, sat alone on a concrete bench near the fence. She wasn't crying. She wasn't scared. She was just very, very quiet. In her lap lay a math worksheet folded and unfolded so many times the paper had softened. The problems were simple numbers under 10, but her pencil hovered above them, as if waiting for permission to land. Maren watched other kids run past her. She practiced a smile in case someone looked her way. No one did. The wind carried the smell of wet grass and the faint sound of traffic beyond the school gates. Maren tucked her feet under the bench, hiding them the way she hid her fingers when she counted. She didn't want anyone to see her struggle, not teachers, not classmates, not even the playground monitors walking by. She glanced at the paper again. 4 plus 3. She tried counting in her head, then on her fingers. Halfway through, she forgot where she was. Her shoulders sank. Maren wasn't bad at school. She listened carefully. She tried hard. But every time the teacher asked, "Does everyone understand?" her chest tightened, and her hand stayed glued to her lap, as if not knowing meant something worse than a wrong answer. She whispered to the worksheet, barely louder than the breeze, "Please, just work." The numbers didn't move. Behind the fence, a black car waited, its engine off, its windows dark. Maren didn't notice it. Right now, all she could see was the empty space beside her on the bench, and how alone it felt. Maren folded the worksheet again, smaller this time, as if shrinking it might make the problem disappear. That was when a shadow touched the edge of the bench. Not fast, not loud, just there. Maren looked up. A girl stood beside her, maybe a year older. Blonde hair caught the afternoon light, and her eyes were a calm, clear blue, like she wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere else. Her clothes were simple but clean. Her shoes were old, carefully tied, the kind someone had taken time to look after. The girl didn't say anything at first. She sat down. The space between them disappeared, not with noise, but with presence. Maren stiffened. She waited for a question, or a joke, or that awkward pause where people decide whether you're worth their time. None of that came. The girl leaned slightly toward the paper in Maren's hands, tilting her head like she was studying something important. "Is that math?" she asked gently. Maren nodded, embarrassed. "A little," she said, which wasn't exactly true. The girl smiled, not wide, not dramatic, just kind. "I know a way that makes it easier," she said. "If you want." Maren hesitated. No one ever offered help like that. Not without a sigh. Not without rushing. Not without making her feel slow. "Why?" Maren asked quietly. The girl blinked, surprised by the question. "Because you look like you're trying." That answer landed somewhere deep. Maren slowly unfolded the paper. The girl didn't grab it. Didn't correct anything. She waited. And in that waiting, something inside, Maren loosened just a little. "My name's Lark," the girl said. "I'm 7. "Maren," she replied. 6. Lark smiled. "Okay, Maren. Let's try together." Lark reached into her pocket and pulled out a short pencil, one that had clearly been sharpened many times. She didn't cross out Maren's work. She didn't erase anything. Instead, she turned the paper slightly and drew 3 small circles in the margin. "Let's forget the numbers for a second," Lark said. "Just look." She added 2 more circles beneath them. "How many circles do you see?" Maren leaned closer, her forehead almost touching the page. She counted slowly, pointing to each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Her eyes widened. That's it, Lark said softly. That's all the numbers are doing. Maren blinked. Again, it felt too simple, too gentle. They tried another problem. This time, Lark drew tiny stars. Not perfect ones, some were lopsided, some too big, but she didn't mind. When Maren hesitated, Lark didn't rush her. When she miscounted, Lark smiled and said, "Almost. Let's count again." For the first time all day, Maren didn't feel her chest tighten. She solved one problem, then another. Her mouth opened in a small, surprised laugh. "I did it," she whispered. Lark clapped once, quiet and proud. "You did." Maren stared at the paper, at the drawings, at the answers that suddenly made sense. Her voice shook, not with sadness, but relief. "I thought I was broken," she admitted. Lark looked at her, serious now. "You're not," she said. "You just needed a kinder way." Maren swallowed. Across the playground, unseen by them, Rowan Hale had stepped out of his car and stopped cold. Because for the first time in weeks, his daughter was smiling. And he had no idea why. Rowan Hale had intended to stay only a moment. He had come early by accident, an empty meeting, a rare gap in his schedule, and now stood near the edge of the playground coat, still on keys, warm in his palm. Then he saw Maren. Not just standing, not just talking, laughing. It stopped him. She was leaning forward on the bench, pointing at the paper, her small finger tracing shapes drawn in pencil. The other girl, Lark, sat close, not crowding, not correcting. Just there. Rowan didn't step closer. He didn't call her name. Something told him this moment was fragile, like it might shatter if he breathed too loudly. He watched Maren solve another problem, watched her shoulders lift, her smile spread slowly, as if she didn't trust it yet. When she got the answer right, Lark celebrated quietly. No cheering, no drawing attention. Just a soft clap and a nod that said, "I knew you could." Rowan felt something tighten in his chest. For weeks, Maren had come home quiet, polite, careful. She answered questions the way children do when they don't want to worry anyone. "School's fine. Yeah, I'm okay." But this light in her eyes, he hadn't seen it in a long time. Rowan glanced at his phone. 3 missed emails, 2 reminders. He turned the screen off. Across the bench, Maren suddenly laughed again, this time louder. Rowan didn't realize he was smiling until his face hurt. He stayed where he was, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel pulled anywhere else. Maren finished the last problem slowly, carefully, as if afraid the answer might disappear if she rushed. She lifted her pencil, looked at the page. Every space was filled. Every answer made sense. She inhaled sharply. I did it," she said. Then louder, surprised by her own voice, "I did it." Lark's face lit up like she'd been waiting for that moment all day. She clapped softly, her eyes shining. "I knew you would," she said. Maren hugged the worksheet to her chest. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was proof, small, shaky proof that something inside her worked just fine. She turned and saw her father. Rowan stood a few steps away, watching her. Not distracted, not on the phone, just watching her. "Dad." Maren jumped up, nearly tripping as she ran to him. "Look, I finished everything." Rowan knelt immediately, bringing himself down to her height. He took the paper with both hands as if it mattered, because it did. "This is all correct," he said quietly. Maren nodded hard. "She showed me a trick," she said, pointing back at Lark. She waited. She didn't get mad. Rowan looked at Lark, at her careful posture, at her worn shoes, at the calm pride in her eyes, pride not for herself, but for his daughter. "Thank you," Rowan said simply. Lark smiled. "That's what friends do." The word settled between them. Friend. Rowan stood and did something Maren didn't expect. He turned his phone completely off and slid it into his coat pocket. Then he looked back at Maren and said something she had never heard him say before. I'm not in a hurry. The car ride home felt different. Marin sat in the back seat, feet swinging worksheet smoothed flat on her lap. She traced the little circles and stars with her finger, smiling to herself. Rowan watched her in the rearview mirror. "How was school today?" he asked. Marin thought for a moment. "Better," she said, then softer, "because someone helped me." Rowan nodded. "Did you want to tell me something about that?" Marin hesitated. Her fingers tightened on the paper. "Dad," she said carefully, "sometimes I understand things, but I don't ask questions." Rowan's hands tightened on the wheel. "Why not?" She stared out the window. "Because everyone else already knows, and I don't want to be the slow one." The words landed heavier than any complaint. Rowan slowed at the next light and turned slightly so he could see her better. "Marin," he said, "you are not slow." She shrugged, unconvinced. "Lark didn't make a face when I didn't know. She just waited." Rowan swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know you felt that way." After a pause, Marin added the sentence that had been building quietly for a long time. "You're always busy." The light turned green. Rowan didn't move for a second. "I have been," he admitted. "Too busy." He took a breath. "That's going to change." Marin looked up, searching his face. "Really?" Rowan nodded. "Starting tonight. Homework together." Marin smiled, small, hopeful, real. In the mirror, Rowan saw it, and promised himself he would never miss it again. The next morning, Briarcrest Academy felt the same to everyone else. The same bell, the same neat hallways, the same quiet hum of privilege. But Marin Hale walked in differently. Her shoulders were straighter, her steps lighter. She sat at her desk and placed her notebook carefully on the table, smoothing the edges the way she had smoothed her worksheet the day before. When Ms. Caldwell began the math lesson, Marin felt the familiar flutter in her chest, but this time it didn't freeze her. The numbers appeared on the board. Simple, clean. Ms. Caldwell turned and asked, "Does anyone want to try this one?" The room stayed silent. Marin felt her hand rise before she had time to stop it. Her heart raced. Ms. Caldwell smiled, surprised but pleased. "Yes." Marin stood slowly and walked to the board. Her classmates watched, not unkindly, just curious. She picked up the chalk and didn't write numbers. She drew circles. 1, 2, 3, then more beneath them. "This is how my friend showed me." Marin said, her voice shaking but steady enough. "You count the pictures, not the numbers first." A pause, then a murmur. A few children leaned forward. One boy nodded. A girl whispered, "Oh." Marin finished the problem correctly. Ms. Caldwell's eyes widened, not in disbelief, but admiration. "That's a wonderful method," she said. "Thank you for sharing." Marin returned to her seat, breathless. She didn't see Lark anywhere. At recess, Marin scanned the playground. At lunch, she checked every table. Nothing. That afternoon, Ms. Caldwell pulled Rowan aside. "Marin was incredible today," she said. Something changed. Rowan smiled, but a question formed behind his eyes. "That girl on the bench yesterday." Where had she gone? Rowan arrived 15 minutes early. Again. This time it was on purpose. He stood near the school entrance, watching children pour out in waves, some loud, some tired, some already arguing about snacks and screens. Marin came running, excitement spilling over. "Dad, did you hear I showed them the circles?" Rowan laughed softly. "I heard. I'm very proud of you." Marin beamed, then looked around. Her smile faded. "Dad?" "I can't find Lark." Rowan felt the same small tightening in his chest. They searched the playground together. Every blonde head caught Marin's attention, then disappointed her. Finally, Rowan suggested the office. "Mrs. Ortega," typed carefully, glasses low on her nose. "Lark," she repeated. "Do you know her last name?" Marin shook her head. "She's 7, and she draws stars." Mrs. Ortega smiled at that. She typed again, then frowned gently. "I'm sorry," she said. We don't have a Lark Monroe enrolled. Marin's face fell. But she was here, Marin insisted. She helped me. Mrs. Ortega paused. We did have a visitor yesterday, she said slowly. A woman asking about enrollment. She brought homemade cookies. She had a little girl with her. Rowan leaned forward. Did she complete the process? Mrs. Ortega shook her head. Not yet. There were financial documents missing. Marin's voice trembled. So, she's not coming back. Rowan knelt beside her. We don't know that, he said gently. And even if she doesn't come here yet, that doesn't mean she's gone. As they walked back to the car, Marin stared at the ground. Dad, she asked quietly, do you think she's okay? Rowan didn't answer right away. I think he said carefully, she's doing her best. That night, Rowan took the long way home. Just in case. The afternoon light was softer on Central Avenue, filtered through clouds that promised rain. Rowan drove slowly, eyes scanning sidewalks, corners, small parks. Then Marin gasped. There, she shouted. Dad, look. On the corner stood a small folding table covered with a blue and white cloth. Neatly arranged trays of cookies filled the surface. A handwritten sign read, Homemade cookies, $2. Behind the table stood a woman with tired eyes and careful posture. Beside her was Lark. She wore the same gentle smile, the same simple clothes. Her shoes were scuffed but clean. She handed a cookie bag to a passerby with both hands, polite and proud. Rowan pulled over. Marin was out of the car before he finished parking. Lark looked up. Her face brightened instantly. Marin. They met halfway, stopping just short of a hug, both glancing at the adults first. Then Lark smiled wider, and Marin stepped closer. Rowan approached, slowly respectful. I'm Rowan, he said to the woman. Marin's father. The woman straightened. Eliza Monroe, she replied. Lark's mom. Rowan gestured to the table. These look wonderful. They're fresh, Eliza said. Made them this morning. Rowan bought 2 dozen, paid without comment. As Eliza packed the cookies, Rowan watched Lark and Marin talking animatedly, circles, stars, benches, laughter. Your daughter helped mine in a way I couldn't, Rowan said quietly. Eliza looked at Lark. Pride and worry crossed her face at the same time. She's very kind, Eliza said. Sometimes too kind. Rowan nodded, and in that moment he understood. Kindness, like need, could be silent and powerful. Rowan Hale didn't leave right away. He stood a short distance from the cookie table, pretending to examine his phone, while quietly observing the small scene in front of him. The city moved around them, cars passed, people crossed the street, a bus hissed to a stop, but at that corner time felt gentler. Marin and Lark sat on the curb knees, almost touching, talking, as if the world had never interrupted them. Lark was explaining something with her hands, drawing invisible shapes in the air. Marin listened with complete attention, nodding, laughing softly. There was no awkwardness between them, no catching up. It was as if they had simply continued a conversation paused the day before. Rowan felt something settle in his chest. He watched Lark carefully. She wasn't performing kindness. She wasn't trying to impress. She was simply present. Eliza Monroe adjusted the trays on the table, aligning the cookies neatly. Her movements were precise, practiced. She thanked each customer politely, never pushing, never apologizing for being there. Rowan approached her again, slower this time. Your daughter has a gift, he said quietly. Eliza glanced at Lark, then back at him. She has a big heart, she replied. Sometimes bigger than her age. Rowan nodded. That kind of heart changes people. Eliza hesitated, then spoke honestly. She's had to grow up faster than I wanted. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just truth. Rowan followed her gaze to Lark's shoes. Scuffed, carefully cleaned. Laces knotted neatly. Yesterday, Rowan said, choosing his words with care, my daughter believed she wasn't smart. Eliza inhaled sharply. She came home smiling for the first time in weeks, Rowan continued. Because your daughter sat down and waited for her. Eliza's eyes shone not with pride alone, but with something heavier. She doesn't like to see people feel alone, Eliza said softly. She knows what that feels like. Rowan didn't ask how. He didn't need to. Across the street, Maren looked up and waved at him, holding up her fingers and counting something for Lark. Lark laughed and corrected her gently. Rowan felt a quiet ache. He had spent years solving problems with money, speed, and force of will. But this kind of healing came from patience, from sitting down, from staying. Can I ask you something? Rowan said. Eliza nodded. You came to the school yesterday, Rowan said. You wanted to enroll Lark. Eliza's shoulders tightened slightly. Yes. But you couldn't finish the process. She nodded again. There are forms, fees, waiting lists. She gave a small, tired smile. Things that don't move just because you want them to. Rowan looked at the table, the cookies, the sign written in careful handwriting. How long have you been selling these? Just this week, Eliza said. It's temporary. Rowan believed her, but he also knew temporary things could last longer than anyone intended. Behind them, Maren and Lark stood up at the same time. Mom, Lark called. Maren has to go. Eliza smiled at her daughter. Okay, sweetheart. Maren hugged Lark, not tightly, not desperately. Just enough. I'll see you, Maren said. Lark nodded. I'll be here. Rowan watched his daughter walk back to the car, turning twice to wave. For the first time in a long while, Rowan didn't think about what he could give. He thought about what he could protect. The car ride home was quieter than usual. Maren sat curled slightly to one side, watching the city slide past the window. The cookie bag rested on her lap unopened. She traced the edge of it with her finger. Rowan noticed. You didn't want one, he asked gently. Maren shook her head. I want to save it. For later, for tomorrow, she said. In case Lark comes. Rowan felt the weight of that sentence. At a red light, Maren spoke again. Dad. Is Lark? Poor Rowan didn't answer immediately. He didn't want to lie. He didn't want to scare her. I think he said carefully, Lark and her mom are going through a hard time. Maren nodded, absorbing that quietly. She didn't tell me, Maren said. She never talks about herself. Rowan smiled faintly. Some people help others, so they don't have to think about their own worries. Maren thought about that. Dad, she said after a moment. Do you think she'll stop coming if things stay hard? The question hung in the air. I don't know, Rowan admitted. Maren hugged the cookie bag to her chest. At home that evening, Rowan kept his promise. He turned his phone off. Not silent. Off. He sat with Maren at the table, listening as she explained circles and stars again, her confidence growing with each explanation. You know, Rowan said you learn best when someone waits for you. Maren smiled. That's what Lark does. Later, after Maren was asleep, Rowan stood by her door longer than necessary. He thought of Eliza's posture, of Lark's careful shoes, of Maren's fear of being seen as slow. Somewhere between those thoughts, a decision began to form. The next morning, Rowan arrived at his office early, not to work, but to think. He reviewed schedules, positions, departments. There was a vacancy he had been meaning to fill: administrative support, stable hours, benefits, on-site childcare. He paused. This wasn't charity. It had to be dignity. That afternoon, Rowan returned to Central Avenue. The table was there again. The blue cloth, the cookies. Eliza looked up, surprised but not uncomfortable. Rowan bought cookies again. Then he spoke. Eliza, he said, may I ask you something? Professionally. Her expression shifted, alert, cautious. I run a company nearby. Rowan continued. We have an open position. Administrative work, stable pay, legal benefits, predictable hours. Eliza stared at him. I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you, Rowan said firmly. I'm offering it because your daughter showed me something important, and because you seem like someone who values responsibility. Eliza's hands trembled slightly. That's a lot, she said honestly. I know, Rowan replied. You don't have to answer now. He handed her a card. Think about it, he said. Whatever you decide, I respect it. As Rowan walked away, he didn't feel heroic. He felt human, and for the first time that felt enough. 3 days passed. To Maren, they felt much longer. Each morning she scanned the playground, hopeful and nervous. Each afternoon she checked the gate, wondering if she'd see familiar blonde hair. Rowan arrived early every day. On the 4th morning, his phone rang as he poured coffee. Eliza Monroe, the voice said. Rowan straightened. I've thought about your offer, Eliza said. I want to accept. Rowan closed his eyes briefly. I'm glad, he said. We'll do everything properly. They did. Paperwork, background checks, school meetings, financial aid processes handled quietly and legally. No shortcuts, no spectacle. The morning Lark returned to school, the air was clean after rain. Maren spotted her first. There she shouted, running. Lark stood beside Eliza at the gate wearing a simple school uniform. Her shoes were new, not flashy, just clean. Her backpack was light pink with small stars on it. But what struck Rowan most wasn't the clothes. It was Lark's posture. She stood taller, not proud, not boastful, just lighter. Maren and Lark met and hugged this time without hesitation. I saved you a seat, Maren said. Lark's eyes filled not with tears, but relief. Inside the classroom, Ms. Caldwell welcomed Lark warmly. At recess, the girls sat under a large tree, papers spread between them. Soon other children joined. Circles appeared in the dirt. Stars followed. Rowan watched from a distance. Maren explained something confidently. Lark listened, nodded, added gently. They weren't just learning, they were healing each other. That evening, Maren drew a picture at the table. 2 houses, side by side, a big heart between them. She showed it to Rowan. Dad, she asked quietly, families don't leave, right? Rowan knelt beside her. Not the ones built with love, he said. Maren smiled. Outside, the city lights turned on one by one. And for once, Rowan didn't feel like he was chasing anything. He was exactly where he needed to be. The invitation was simple. No formal message, no carefully worded email. Just a quiet question from Eliza Monroe at the school gate. If you and Maren would like, we're having dinner tomorrow evening. Rowan hesitated for less than a second. We'd love to, he said. The apartment was modest but warm. The kind of place where everything had a purpose, even if it wasn't new. There were drawings taped neatly to the refrigerator, flowers, stars, 2 little girls holding hands. Maren noticed them immediately. You drew these, she asked Lark. Lark nodded. I like drawing when things feel confusing. Maren smiled. Me too. The girls disappeared into Lark's room, their voices dissolving into laughter. Rowan and Eliza remained in the small kitchen where the scent of roasted chicken filled the air. Can I help? Rowan asked. Eliza shook her head. Just sit. That's enough. So he did. For the first time in a long while, Rowan wasn't checking the time. He wasn't anticipating the next obligation. He listened to the hum of the oven, to the quiet rhythm of someone else's home. Dinner was unremarkable in every way that mattered. No speeches, no explanations. Just food passed gently from hand to hand. Lark told a story about a classmate who had finally understood subtraction. Maren chimed in, correcting a detail, then laughing at herself. Rowan watched Maren carefully. She was relaxed, not performing, not careful, just present. After dinner, the girls sat on the floor drawing together. Eliza poured tea. Rowan noticed the way her shoulders had softened since starting work, how she no longer held herself, as if bracing for bad news. Thank you, Eliza said quietly once the girls were absorbed in their drawings. For what? Rowan asked. For seeing us, she replied. Not just the situation. Rowan nodded. I needed that too. When it was time to leave, Maren hugged Lark tightly. Tomorrow, she asked. Tomorrow, Lark replied. In the car, Maren leaned back, sleepy and content. That felt like a real evening, she said. Rowan smiled. It did. At school, something subtle began to change. It wasn't announced. It wasn't dramatic. It simply spread. Under the large tree near the playground, Maren and Lark sat together every recess. Sometimes they worked on math. Sometimes they drew. Sometimes they just talked, legs swinging in quiet rhythm. Other children noticed. One by one, they joined. A boy who struggled with numbers, a girl who hated raising her hand. Maren explained patiently. Lark listened, then added her own gentle explanations. They never rushed anyone. They never laughed at mistakes. Miss Caldwell watched from a distance, hands folded. They've created something special, she told Rowan one afternoon. A safe place. Rowan nodded. At home, Maren had changed too. She talked more. She asked questions. One evening, as they worked on homework together, Maren paused. Dad, she said, when I don't understand something, you don't get upset anymore. Rowan swallowed. I used to, he admitted. Not at you, at myself. Maren considered that. I like it better now, she said. Rowan did too. Meanwhile, Eliza settled into her new role with quiet competence. She organized files, anticipated needs, solved problems before they became visible. You're very good at this, Rowan told her one afternoon. Eliza smiled, not shyly but confidently. I forgot I was, she said. The four of them began spending time together naturally. Not scheduled, not forced. Weekend walks, shared meals, laughter that came easily. One afternoon, as the girls lay on the grass, watching clouds drift by, Maren spoke softly. Lark, she said, I used to think being confused meant something was wrong with me. Lark turned her head. And now I think it just means I haven't learned it yet. Lark smiled. That's what I think too. Under the tree, something rooted itself deeply. Not rescue, not obligation, belonging. The drawing happened on a quiet Sunday. Crayons spread across the patio table, papers overlapping. The girls worked side by side, whispering, giggling, then falling silent as the idea took shape. Come see, Lark called. Rowan and Eliza stepped closer. On the page were two houses, one slightly bigger, one smaller. Between them, a large red heart connected the roofs. Below, in careful letters, now we're a real family. Maren looked up, suddenly unsure. Dad. Her voice trembled just a little. Families don't leave, right? The question wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, honest. Rowan knelt in front of her, steady and calm. Not the ones built with love, he said. Those stay. Maren nodded, absorbing the words as if testing their weight. Eliza placed a gentle hand on Lark's shoulder. Lark leaned into it naturally, without fear. They didn't make promises about the future. They didn't define anything. They simply stood there, four people who had found one another at the right moment. That evening, as Rowan tucked Maren into bed, she reached for his hand. Thank you for staying, she whispered. Rowan squeezed her fingers. I'm not going anywhere. Across the city, lights turned on in windows one by one. Under the big tree at school the next day, two girls sat together again. Papers, open, pencils, ready, laughter, waiting. Not because they needed saving, but because someone had finally chosen to sit down and stay. Rowan Hale used to solve problems by assigning them to someone else. A call, a calendar invite, a signature at the bottom of a form. But the message from Ms. Caldwell wasn't something he could delegate. Can we talk about Maren's progress today, if possible? Rowan arrived at Briarcrest Academy with his coat still damp from the Seattle drizzle. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and new books. Children's artwork lined the walls like bright windows into a world adults often forgot. Ms. Caldwell greeted him warmly and led him into a small conference room with 2 chairs and a box of tissues that looked like it had lived there forever. Rowan's stomach tightened automatically. "I want to start by saying this is good news, Ms." Caldwell said quickly, as if she could read his face. Rowan exhaled, almost embarrassed by his own fear. "Maren has changed," Ms. Caldwell continued. "Not just academically, socially, emotionally. She speaks up now. She asks questions. She helps other children." Rowan nodded, pride rising, then something else. Something sharp. "Lark," he said. Ms. Caldwell smiled. "Yes, Lark has been a wonderful influence." Rowan's fingers intertwined on the table. "I'm grateful, truly, but I also want to be careful." Ms. Caldwell tilted her head. Careful about what? Rowan hesitated, then chose honesty. "About people assuming this is solved, like a friend can replace a parent, or like my daughter's confidence is now guaranteed." Miss Caldwell softened. "That's not what I see at all." Rowan looked up. "What I see," she said, "is a child who finally feels safe enough to be herself. That safety is coming from 2 places: her friendship with Lark and your presence." Rowan's throat tightened. "She talks about you," Ms. Caldwell continued. "About homework nights. About you turning off your phone. About you being early." Rowan stared at the table for a second, the words settling. He had been late for so long that being on time felt like a miracle. Ms. Caldwell leaned forward slightly. "But I do need to mention one thing." Rowan's heart jumped again. "Maren sometimes goes quiet when adults get too serious," Ms. Caldwell said gently. "If she senses tension, she tries to disappear." Rowan's chest tightened. "She's always been polite," he said. Ms. Caldwell nodded. "Polite isn't always peaceful." The silence in the room grew heavier, but not unsafe. Not frightening, just true. Rowan swallowed. "What do you suggest?" Ms. Caldwell smiled softly. "Keep doing what you're doing. And when she's quiet, don't fill the silence with solutions. Just stay with her." Rowan nodded slowly. Outside, the bell rang. Through the window, Rowan saw Maren under the big tree papers, spread circles drawn in the dirt, Lark beside her, steady as a lighthouse. Rowan stood. He couldn't outsource this. Not anymore. That evening, Rowan cooked dinner. Not because he was suddenly a perfect father, but because he needed his hands to do something honest while his heart caught up. Maren sat at the counter, swinging her legs, telling him about recess, about how another girl had joined them under the tree, about how Lark had drawn the funniest star and said, "Perfection is boring." Rowan listened, really listened. After dinner, they did homework at the dining table. Maren solved problems with circles and stars, then slowly stopped drawing them. "I'm trying to see it in my head now," she said. Rowan smiled. "You're building your own bridge." Maren's face warmed with pride. When the last problem was finished, Rowan waited for the usual routine bath pajamas bedtime story, but Maren lingered at the table with her pencil, tracing nothing on the paper. Rowan didn't rush her. He remembered Ms. Caldwell's words. "When she's quiet, stay." "Maren," he said softly, "what's on your mind?" Maren hesitated, then looked up. Her eyes were wide and honest, like she wasn't sure if the question was allowed. "Dad." Rowan's heart tightened instantly, but he kept his voice calm. "Yes, sweetheart." Maren held her pencil a little tighter. "Do you think Mom would have liked Lark?" The room went still. Not scary, not dramatic, just still, like the world took one step back to let the truth breathe. Rowan blinked, emotion rising so quickly it surprised him. He had not heard Maren say her mother's name in weeks, not directly. He pulled out a chair and sat closer. "I'm sure she would have," Rowan said gently. "Your mom loved kind hearts." Maren nodded, relieved by the answer, but she wasn't finished. "I think about her when good things happen," Maren whispered, "because I want to tell her." Rowan's throat tightened. "I know," he said quietly. "I do too." Marin's voice grew smaller but steadier. Dad, can I ask something I always think but never say? Rowan's chest felt full and fragile at the same time. You can ask me anything, he said. Marin took a slow breath, as if she were stepping into cold water. Will I ever have a mom again? Rowan didn't flinch. He didn't lie. He reached across the table and covered her small hand with his. I don't know what the future holds, he said truthfully. But I do know this: you and I are not alone anymore. Marin's eyes searched his face. What do you mean? Rowan felt his voice soften. I mean, we have people who care about us. We have Lark, we have Eliza, and we have each other in a way I didn't give you before. Marin's lower lip trembled slightly, not fear, just emotion. Rowan continued steady and warm. No matter what happens, I will not disappear from you again. I will be here, fully. Marin's shoulders dropped like she had been holding them up for months. She nodded. Then, in a voice so small it almost vanished, she said, Okay. Rowan held her hand a little tighter. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt like it had room for both grief and hope. At the office, Eliza Monroe was becoming essential, not in a loud way, in the quiet way that made systems run smoothly and people breathe easier. She organized Rowan's calendar without making him feel controlled. She handled client emails with clarity and warmth. She anticipated problems before they became emergencies. But the most important thing she did couldn't be tracked on a spreadsheet. She stopped flinching when someone praised her. One afternoon, Rowan called her into his office. Eliza stepped in with a notebook in hand, professional prepared. Rowan gestured to the chair. Please sit. Eliza sat, posture straight, eyes attentive. Rowan leaned forward slightly. I want to talk to you about your role here. Eliza's stomach tightened, old reflex. Before she could hide it, Rowan noticed. He spoke calmly, not testing her. This is good, he said. Very good. Eliza blinked. You've improved workflow across 3 departments, Rowan continued. You've reduced delays in client communication. And you've done it without stepping on anyone. Eliza swallowed. I just did what needed doing, she said. Rowan nodded. Exactly. That's rare. A pause. Then Rowan said, Eliza, I'd like to offer you a promotion. Executive assistant. Working directly with me. Eliza froze. The words didn't feel real, like someone had said them to the wrong person. I don't know if I'm qualified, she whispered, and she hated that the insecurity slipped out so fast. Rowan didn't correct her with empty encouragement. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were examples of her work projects. She had reorganized feedback from staff, measurable improvements. This is evidence, Rowan said. Not opinions. You are qualified. Eliza stared at the folder, her throat tight. For a long time, she had believed stability was a temporary thing, something you borrowed until life took it back. Rowan watched her gently. You don't have to decide today, he added. Eliza looked up. In her eyes was something raw, not pain, but a cautious hope that didn't want to be disappointed. She took a slow breath. Actually, she said, voice trembling slightly, I don't need days. Rowan's eyebrows lifted. Eliza continued, stronger now. I accept. Rowan smiled genuinely. Good, he said. We'll start Monday. When Eliza left the office, she walked differently. Not like someone waiting for the next disaster. Like someone who finally believed she deserved a steady ground. That evening at school, Pickup Marin and Lark ran out together laughing. Eliza watched her daughter, lighter, safer, more like a child again. Rowan watched Marin, braver, brighter, no longer hiding. And between the 2 adults, there was a quiet understanding 2 girls had done what money and pride couldn't. They had reminded the grown-ups how to come home. The invitation came on a quiet Friday afternoon. Eliza stood by Rowan's office door, holding a small notepad she didn't really need. If you and Marin are free tomorrow night, she said carefully, we'd love to have you for dinner. Rowan looked up, surprised, not because of the invitation, but because of how natural it felt. "We'd be honored," he replied. That evening, Maren could hardly sit still in the back seat. She kept smoothing her dress, checking the small gift bag on her lap cookies she and Rowan had baked together. "I hope she likes them," Maren said. "She will," Rowan answered. "Because you made them." Eliza's apartment glowed with warm light. Nothing extravagant, nothing staged, a clean table, a simple meal, plants by the window that had clearly survived a lot together. Lark opened the door before they could knock. "Maren!" she exclaimed. The girls hugged instantly, dissolving the space between days apart. They talked at once, laughing, pulling each other toward the living room. Rowan and Eliza watched from the doorway. For a moment, neither spoke. Dinner passed easily. Stories of school, of the tree, of the new kid who learned subtraction that day. Lark talked with her hands. Maren listened with her whole body. Rowan noticed how Maren leaned toward Lark when she laughed. Not clinging, just comfortable. After the dishes were cleared, the girls spread crayons across the coffee table. "Can we draw?" Maren asked. Always, Eliza smiled. Rowan and Eliza sat side by side, not close, not distant. "This feels peaceful," Eliza said quietly. Rowan nodded. "It does." There were no big conversations, no declarations, just two adults sharing the same unspoken thought. "Let's not rush this." When it was time to leave, Maren hugged Lark tightly. "Tomorrow at school," she said. Lark nodded. "I'll save you a spot." In the car, Maren leaned her head against the window, sleepy and content. "Dad." She murmured that didn't feel scary. Rowan smiled. It didn't. Sunday morning arrived gently. No alarms, no rushing. The girls sat on the patio floor, crayons scattered sunlight warming the concrete. Rowan brought lemonade. Eliza watched from the doorway, arms folded loosely, not guarding, just present. The drawing took time. They whispered. They erased. They argued softly about colors. When they finally called the adults over, their voices carried something serious. "Come see," Lark said. On the paper were two houses, one larger, one smaller. Between them, a wide red heart connecting the rooftops. Below, written carefully in uneven letters, "Now we're a real family." The words hung in the air. Maren's confidence wavered. She looked up at Rowan, eyes searching, not demanding. "Dad," she asked softly, "families don't leave, right?" The question wasn't desperate. It was careful. Rowan knelt beside her immediately, steady and calm. "Not the ones built with love," he said. "Those stay." Maren let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Eliza felt Lark lean into her side, small and trusting. She wrapped an arm around her daughter without thinking. The four of them stood there, not in a perfect shape, not in a finished story, but together. That afternoon, Rowan turned his phone off without ceremony. Eliza made lunch. The girls played on the floor, building stories out of nothing at all. Later, as shadows lengthened, Maren sat beside Rowan. "Dad," she said, "even if things change, you'll tell me, right?" Rowan nodded. "I promise," Maren smiled. Across the table, Lark watched them quietly, then returned to her drawing, satisfied. Children, Rowan realized, didn't need guarantees. They needed honesty and presence. Monday morning returned them to routine. Backpacks, shoes by the door, a last-minute search for a missing pencil. At school, Maren and Lark ran ahead together, disappearing under the big tree, as if it had always been theirs. Rowan and Eliza lingered near the gate. "They're different," Eliza said softly. Rowan nodded. "So are we." That afternoon, Rowan picked Maren up early. She ran to him, waving a worksheet proudly. "I did it all by myself," she said. "But I like it better when we do it together." Rowan hugged her tightly right there on the playground. At home that night, Rowan cooked while Maren set the table. He left his phone in the drawer, forgotten, unmissed. When he tucked her in, Maren held his hand. "Dad," she whispered, "even if I never have another mom, it's okay." Rowan's heart tightened, but he didn't look away. Why, he asked gently. Because now, she said, "I know you're really here." Rowan kissed her forehead. "I always will be." Across the city, Eliza tucked Lark into bed. Lark held the drawing close. "Mom," she asked, "do you think some families are chosen?" Eliza smiled, brushing her hair back. "I think the best ones are." The lights went out in both homes. Under the big tree at school the next day, two girls sat side by side, papers spread between them, circles and stars filling the ground. They weren't saving each other anymore. They were growing. And somewhere between patience, kindness, and a choice to stay, a family had quietly begun. Final line fade out. Sometimes children don't need to be rescued. They just need someone to sit down and stay. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Until our next story.